Great. Well, welcome everyone. We might be short one panelist, but have a great group of experts to discuss the 5G topic today. To my left is Byron Sood, CEO of Vasona Networks. To his left is Hussam Hamimi, Head of Mobile Networks and Technology Strategy for Ericsson North America. To his left is Dave McLaughlin, CEO and co-founder of Buddy Platform. And to Dave's left, we have Scott Sutherland, Managing Director of Telegraph Hill Advisors. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me. We've been doing a lot of work on 5G. I'm a Wall Street analyst, so it's still very late to the Wall Street circles. I think it's much more present in each of your respective roles. Why don't I start with kind of the open-end question? Before that, why don't we go down the list and talk about a little bit about each of your companies and your respective roles at those companies? Byron.
Hello?
Okay, here we go. Sorry.
Great, thanks Jennifer for the introduction. Byron Sood, CEO of Vasona Networks. Vasona is a software infrastructure company that's focused on improving the performance of IP applications over mobile networks. Our software is deployed in the radio access of the mobile networks and is currently being used by customers such as Cellcom here in the US, Telefonica in Greater London, and a variety of other Tier 1 operators that are yet to be announced. Our software runs on general purpose compute, IT-based hardware. For those of you that are following the industry and 5G, it may sound a lot like edge computing, mobile edge computing. Vasona's been effectively doing mobile edge computing since our inception in 2010, so we have quite a bit of experience in the space, and the discussion point around 5G and mobile edge computing is very native to us.
Great. Thank you, Byron.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hussam Hamimi with Ericsson, North America. I'm responsible for the network and technology strategy in North America and part of the CTO office. Of course, Ericsson is one of the leading companies when it comes to the 5G, the mobile networks, from the radio, from the core network, and also the OSS, BSS. The 5G, of course, we have a lot of work evolving from the LTE into the 5G, and the mission of the Ericsson is to provide the networked society where everything will be connected, can be connected, and this will improve both the industries, different industries, and the different societies.
Thank you. Dave?
Hi everyone, I'm Dave McLaughlin, CEO of Buddy Platform. We are a company based out of Seattle that manages and processes data that's generated by connected devices. So typically telemetry and payload data from connected things. I like to talk about what we do as playing at the blunt end of the hype around Internet of Things, right? There's a lot of hype around big data and everything connected and the connected toothbrush and all these sorts of scenarios. But the reality is where people are spending money and where the value really is being found today is actually at the other end of that hype spectrum. Very basic scenarios today that companies that have never been in the digital space in this, or in this perspective, ever before, now getting into that space. So that's where we play. We are one of the first, if not the first, dedicated IoT companies that's publicly traded. And we are working with a range of companies around the world on a range of transport mechanisms. So 5G just being one of those is where we're obviously looking to be, but Wi-Fi, cellular, LoRa, Sigfox, there's a whole range as well. So we're very excited about 5G and delighted to be here today.
Great. Scott?
So, Scott Sutherland, founder and managing director of Telegraph Hill Advisors. We are an advisory services firm for companies in the mobile and digital media space to raise capital and M&A. Doing that for about 5 years. For the first 20 years, spent my time as a Wall Street analyst covering mobile and internet companies on the traditional sense. Until 1999, I decided this next thing, the mobile internet, was going to happen. We're obviously seeing that in full bloom now. 2001, I remember writing a book. The front cover had a picture of the mobile internet connected to things like fridges and other devices, Palm Pilots, phones. So it's great to see the IoT world mature to where we are going to see billions of devices connected.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to start with an open-ended question, just a general question, as you see the general uses for 5G, because the way, I follow Verizon and the way they would describe it as a fixed local loop wireless broadband. But then there's certainly smart cities and so many other. As you sit in each of your respective seats, can you talk about how you see 5G and the uses for it?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak first.
Sure.
So to me, I think the number one application and use case is video.
Video.
I mean, with 5G, we're talking about bigger pipes, and we're talking about lower latencies. And you think about the video experience today on your mobile phone, and it's kind of shocking to think about the fact that consumers are willing to accept slow start times and the spinning wheel of death that you often get when you're trying to watch video. If you ever had that experience at home when you're watching your large screen, it would be, that would be completely unacceptable. So as we go from 4G to 5G, and we have much, larger pipes that are in the network, it's pretty clear to us that video will be a really core driving application for users. And the expectations that users have will ratchet up. The having video stall or freeze on a 5G network will be completely unacceptable, like it is on today's TVs when you watch at home.
And could I just add to that, just on the question of video, carriers like Sprint and T-Mobile are now compressing video, and people are accepting what would call a lower quality video.
Yeah.
Do you see that changing in a 5G world?
Absolutely. I think people accept it because that's all they can really get. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, think about watching video at home on your your flat screen TV, your high def TV. Imagine it stalling or getting that wheel. Everyone would be aghast at that at home. And ultimately that same experience is going to move to the handset or to the smartphone. It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of expectation and what consumers are willing to put up with, the alternatives they can get. And once they get trained and expect to have high quality, 30 frames per second, high definition video on their smartphones, they're not going to accept anything less than that. A good example is my 13-year-old son. So 8 days ago, my data plan rolled over. I have a family plan with him and me. We have 20 gigabytes. And yesterday, 7 days into the plan, I got the little alert saying you've used 90% of your data. And I was like, well, I didn't do that. So I called him up and asked him, and I said, what's going on? Why are you using 18 gigabytes in 7 days? And he said, I'm watching YouTube, a lot of YouTube and a lot of Twitch. So, if the younger generation is any indication of how people are going to be consuming data going forward, it's going to be video. It already is here today, and it's going to be even bigger as we go into 5G.
How about you, Hassan? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, to a certain extent, of course. I would like to start with the 5G as a platform. This platform enables not only just one use case. It will be multiple of use cases. Definitely, the video or the high speed of the video is one of them. And as you mentioned earlier, that Verizon and others, they are looking into the 5G, the very first use case to be a fixed wireless, so that provide a fixed wireless connectivity to the homes. But also, when it comes to the 5G, it also the capabilities and the specs of the 5G and requirements enables the 5G to provide multiple of things. Number one is definitely enhancement to the mobile broadband that we have right now. We see that with the LTE, with the 3G, and then LTE, we started to open up the usage of the users, and all the different also industries and applications using the smartphones with the speeds that we have today. Imagine what will happen if you increase the speeds by 10-fold and even 100-fold. There will be a lot of other application transformations. But it's not only this. Also, the 5G platform is also geared towards providing connectivity to the devices, whether they are massive devices meaning that massive machine devices, which will be scattered all over the place. We need a lot of coverage, and we need to have capabilities for those devices to stay for years with a battery, low consumption, and also some of the critical machine communications, critical machine devices that will require a very, very low latency and require a very high resiliency. So all in all, when it comes to the 5G, it's a platform to provide multiple of use cases that will have a big impact on a lot of the way that we're conducting, the way we are connecting, and the way the other devices connecting that will enhance our life.
Great, thank you. Dave?
Could I just chime in with an IoT perspective on 5G, because I think there's a couple of key aspects to 5G that are going to be vital for the growth of the IoT in the next 5 to 10 years. If you believe the forecast that there's going to be somewhere between 30 and 50 billion connected devices by 2020, somewhere around 2/3 of those won't be iPads and phones and connected PCs and those sort of computing devices. There'll be doorbells and light bulbs and cars and refrigerators and so on and so on. All of a sudden, you've got a massive influx and increase in data traffic flowing around the network, number one. But the other thing to remember, and a lot of folks forget this, is these devices not only talk back to the cloud, but have the ability or potential to talk to amongst themselves as well. So now you have this exponential increase in amount of data, volume of data, both volume and velocity, in fact, that's flying around the network. And so a massive capacity increase is going to be needed for that sort of scenario. But in a couple of scenarios, and I would draw your attention to health and connected car as being two, latency is super, super important. Health, sort of speaks for itself. The ability to get data back and forth between these devices with the least possible latency, obviously vital, but even in connected car scenarios where you might have connectivity between cars. Think of the scenario with braking, where a car ahead brakes and the car behind needs to know. The connectivity between those cars needs to be very, very low latency in order for that to be safe and effective. So anyway, a couple of key aspects of 5G which we're looking forward to, and I think IoT will be amongst the top scenarios for the network, if not the top one.
Scott?
So I would add to the capabilities is obviously more throughput and bandwidth, not just video, but virtual reality, augmented reality. I've always said for years, as you've gone from 2G to 3G to 4G, the carriers build it, the consumer's going to come and they're going to find new use cases to consume that bandwidth. Probably one of the more interesting things, exciting things, is the IoT space with the 30 to 50 billion connected devices. One of the areas I think is very interesting is the connected vehicle. You look what Uber's doing, Ford's doing, Mercedes is doing, kind of same time frame, 2025, they all expect to have autonomous driving vehicles. No driver in the vehicle. Your Uber comes, picks you up, drives you around. You want that car to have split-second reaction times to what's going on with traffic, what's going on around it, the weather. So one of the promises of 5G is millisecond reaction time to the network. So I think that'll be interesting. One of the other use cases I don't think we talked about was the ability of, it's not capacity, but congestion, the number of devices on the network. So right now, a lot of these low bandwidth IoT applications are still on 2G. Basically, you don't need the bandwidth, but you don't want it on the 4G network with congestion. So being able to move those devices onto a network that's more intelligent and smart of knowing what those device needs are is also a benefit.
How do you, all of this seems to require a lot of work underneath, either the pipes, the fiber to get there, the spectrum needed to carry this. And I guess how would you see 5G being bridged by 4G? We're just, we haven't even really entered full carriers, full LTE build out. You see T-Mobile and Sprint kind of playing catch up. But what's needed here? Is it a lot more spectrum? Is it a lot more fiber? Is it both?
So from Vasona's perspective, and we'll let Ericsson comment about the air interface, but I think a key tenet of 5G and having operators prepared to get to 5G is having software-based network architectures. the world or the days of purpose-built hardware and scaling that up are over. I think we've seen that in data centers. What's happened with Facebook and Google and all the data center companies, they've recognized that in order to scale their networks, they have to use general purpose commodity off-the-shelf switches, white label switches, white label servers, and they really design their entire networks around software. Given that trend, I think it's important that carriers start moving that direction now with 4G networks. Obviously, Vasona is completely built on software.
Right.
The current thinking is that 5G, the underlying tenets of 5G, will be very heavily supported by network function virtualization, software-defined networks, really software-based network architecture, software-based network solutions that give them the flexibility to react to changes in the network, to add new services, new applications very quickly than they're able to do today with purpose-built equipment.
So yeah, when it comes to 5G, as I mentioned earlier, it's a platform. It's a platform that will be built on what we have on the 4G right now. Of course, to get into this platform, we will start to look into multiple of things. Number one is going into a higher frequency band so that we can get a much bigger bandwidth, because this is the key for having a higher data rate pipes. Along with that, of course, there will be also some of the antenna solutions, like when we talk about the massive MIMO, increase the massive MIMO, the beamforming, etc., etc. If I were just to put like few points here, number one is definitely we need some new frequency that will be in the millimeter wave, for example, to get this. But the other elements, like the multi-user MIMO, the massive MIMO, the beamforming, these are the things that we can start working on it with the 4G right now. And Ericsson and others are promoting some kind of features packages, we call it, for example, the 5G plugins, that some of those features you can put it on your current LTE network right now to bridge the gap with the capabilities to the 5G until you have the frequency bands that are needed. So that's from the radio side point of view. But the LTE itself, will also evolve. So we'll have two components, one in the new radio that's mentioned, and then the LTE. But when it comes also to the core network has to be ready to capture all of this, number one, data, and also to cater for the specification of different use cases. As I mentioned, there will be a specification for Internet of Things regarding massive massive machine type communication. There will be characteristics for the critical machine communication, for fixed wireless, for enhanced mobile broadband. All of this to be done, we need to have a very flexible core network, and I agree that this core network has to be built on, become software defined. It will be software controlled. So this is one of the things that the operators, some of them already started doing it, and start to prepare the core network to be ready for carrying the 5G. Okay.
Can I ask, are you seeing the carriers, because am I correct in saying that 5G standards won't really be set until 2020? But are you seeing the carriers think like what you just said? I mean, because AT&T will say, we're no longer a hardware company, we're becoming a software company. Are they thinking ahead of that even before the standards are set?
So the standards that you're referring to is mostly around the air interface standard.
Okay.
And the first version of the LTE will be in release in 3GPP release 15, which is about mid of 2018. The second one, which will be fully compliant with ITU 2020 requirement. This is where we talk about, the gigabits, the sub millisecond latency, etc., etc. This will be coming close to the end of 2019.
2019. Okay.
So, but this is regarding the radio. But when we talk about the preparation of the core network and the having network functions, virtualization, and SDNs, these are the things that operators can do it right now in the 4G core networks.
Okay.
And the journey started, but not everybody at the same level right now. But definitely it started.
Got it. Okay, Dave, how about smart cities? I mean, I've been invited to 3 smart cities conferences in the next 2 months. It's definitely the buzzword here, but how would you, like if someone said at a cocktail party, what is a smart city? What is the answer that you'd give? I mean, because there seems to be so many multifaceted answers to that.
Yeah, smart cities is one of those terms like, big data and so on that just gets adopted and hyped and buzzed. Look, I think the way we look at smart cities, if I can perpetuate that term, is the increasing connectivity of civic infrastructure, the increasing addition of connected sensors and measurement, real-time measurement of things in an urban environment. And so amongst the ones that we're seeing being deployed most rapidly are things such as resource and energy monitoring. So monitoring electricity, monitoring water, monitoring gas, monitoring solar power generation from solar cells on a roof of a building, for example. And also things like street lamps. There's a growing movement around the world for civic outfits, cities and councils and so forth, to reclaim that street lamp infrastructure from the power companies because it represents such an incredible asset in terms of real estate and deployed technology opportunity to roll out things like Wi-Fi across the city and to do traffic measurement and pedestrian safety and so on and so on and so on. So, for example, there's something like 45 million street lamps in the United States. It is expected that in the next 10 years, all of those will be connected in some fashion. And it may be as simple as remote turning them on and off and figuring out if a lamp is blown or bulb is blown. It might be as complex as doing gunshot triangulation and biohazard detection and so forth. So again, the spectrum is wide here, but what we're seeing is the very rapid connectivity of urban and civic assets across the city, and we're seeing it at a fairly healthy clip, especially given when I mentioned before the hype and the pointy end of the hype curve. This is very much at the blunt end. Cities across the world are hiring CIOs, and they're rolling out connectivity at a civic level. So we're going to see this move very, very quickly.
Now those types of monitoring, like I'm just thinking street lights, it's very different than Beer and Sun using all this data. I mean, is that require a good amount of spectrum, or not really? And since it's low data suck, for lack of a better word, could it be more low band spectrum, or do you need that mega high band spectrum?
So what's interesting about this sort of data is, and of course there's no general rule, but sort of generally speaking, it's fairly consistent data. It's regular, it's heartbeats, it's telemetry. Mm-hmm. And so it's very predictable, it's very manageable, you can plan around it. And so for today, and this will change rapidly, but for today, existing cellular networks are capable of this capacity. But that's going to change very rapidly. Right now, for example, the sort of growing standard for measuring resource consumption by a building would be data uploads from a power meter or a water meter every 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Well, when that becomes every 15 seconds, and every building is connected, and it's not just power, but it's water and it's gas and it's solar, and those devices are communicating between each other, then you can see this starts to get exponentially greater.
Got it. Scott, are you seeing similar trends there? Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something?
Go ahead, after.
Are you with your clientele? Is that how they're thinking? Is that where the money's following, kind of these trends?
Well, I'd say, again, smart cities, it's a very huge opportunity. There's multiple segments there. So beyond the utilities, I mean, one I've come across is doing smart grid. This is something that does need 5G. When you have a surge in an electrical line, you need to shut down or counteract that surge before it hits the power plant or a hub there. Mm-hmm. So you need to know instantaneously when that's going to happen and how to shut down a transformer or something else. So that will take advantage of 5G, for example, for instantaneous or millisecond reaction time. We're seeing parking meters, other things in infrastructure like tolling and metering in the smart city, also very large opportunities. One of our clients we work with is right now trying to figure out policemen. They should be out policing, make sure people are safe, and they're watching if people have one person or 3 people in a toll lane. You could really substitute IoT there to get the police doing what they need to do and making sure there's public safety in the market. So yes, we're seeing a lot of case studies and examples out there, but as you just said, there's a lot of different, it's a big buzzword, smart city, and it's made up of a lot of different markets.
When I think as you think down the line, if you're one of these cities, government, you're thinking of the costs that can be removed. Is that a fair statement? And just quantifying that opportunity is huge.
Yeah.
Vasona?
Well, when it comes to the smart cities, it's not only just about the cost, because the cost, of course, is one thing. If you can do something, all the devices around you or everything around you will be connected, and there will be some kind of an intelligence that starts to
Sure.
make decisions for you or help you to make better decisions as an individual, so that you can reduce, the cost or save the environment, and stuff like this. But if we look at it, it's not only just a cost saving. Sometimes it's also enhancing the way that we are conducting the business or doing things. Imagine that if you're, and there are a lot of examples that has mentioned here, but imagine that you have the connectivity at the doctor's office. Okay, this can enhance the way that the healthcare is delivered to you. It can be delivered to you at home instead of you just going to the office. Okay, through all the sensors and the things that are in the home that will be connected together, and you'll have some kind of an analytic engine behind it that connected to the doctor's office that will start to make the decisions for you on the things that you do. And examples are very, very many examples, like in education. We'll see also evolution in education. So the smart cities, the purpose of it is to help the people to evolve the way that they will live, hopefully to the better, okay, and also will save the environment and lower the cost. To do this, you will need two things. Number one is the connectivity, which is very, very important, and number two is the analytics.
Is the what?
The analytics.
Analytics,
that are going
okay.
to do this. And to comment on the comment or the discussions about the need for the light bulbs, the connectivity, the whole purpose of the 5G here is that you are going to provide a different level of connectivities from a very low power, low data rates, okay, to a high data rates, like a video. So, for example, if somebody in an industry that they want to connect devices that will have a camera, very high definition camera, at the same time they are sensing something like a carbon monoxide that they want to detect. Okay, they will not be treated the same. But on the 5G, because it's one platform controlled by one business system, then you can provide all of this instead of having multiple of different systems like LoRa for the low power. You have, for example, cellular for the high power consumption, something for the local area. You can have with the 5G multiple of different connectivities that are controlled by one control core network that is software defined, and then you can have different slices that will cater for those different things.
If I may make a few
Absolutely.
comments. So I don't think there's any doubt that 5G is going to be very heavily driven by IoT. Again, to use some of my own personal examples, I was looking at my router at my house the other day. I have 50 IP addresses assigned to devices in my home. I live in Silicon Valley, so maybe I'm not the norm, but there's no question that 5G and even 4G networks are, we're going to be hooking up everything to these networks. The demands on the network are going to change as well, and the network equipment is going to change. We're now going to need to have infrastructure that can manage a large number of low bandwidth transactions. It's going to have to be latency sensitive. I think you were commenting about connected cars and collision detection. It's also going to need to manage video, because those people that are in those autonomous driving vehicles, they're going to be sitting in the back watching YouTube. So you're going to have a very interesting dynamic in terms of what the demands are on the network. And as infrastructure companies, we're going to have to keep up with what those needs are and evolve to fit those needs.
Brings up the next question. Are the networks ready? What is the speed of deployment? We talked about the standard timeframes, but are we sitting there twiddling our thumbs waiting for this tsunami, or are they thinking and getting ready for this? Are you in the C2 sit-in? Are you seeing that?
of course, the operators and the vendors behind the operators supporting them, they have to start from one point and then starts to spread out. So the starting point right now, and especially if we're focusing on the North America, it is with the lead operators that they want to have the 5G at the millimeter wave, and we talked about it before, very high data rate, to provide fixed wireless to the home. Okay, and this is the starting point that we'll have it there. And of course, to do this, they already started to prepare their core network, as we talked about, and pushing for the trials right now and looking into the capability and what would be the user performance when they have this. Once you have it in place, then start all the other use cases to be coming. Some other operators, they are looking into different use cases like enhanced mobile broadband. Okay. So yes, it will start in one place and starts to spread, both vertically and horizontally.
You were talking about bridging 4G to 5G before, and I think an important data point to recall here too is that a lot of connected devices are still very much on Wi-Fi or Zigbee or these other networks, and so ultimately there's going to be a bridging, if you will, maybe not a technical one, but certainly a product-oriented or business-oriented bridging of these various platforms. And I don't think you're going to see everything suddenly hit 5G on day one.
Right.
Obviously. To put some numbers around this, if you look at the world of connected light bulbs today, these are light bulbs that you can control, typically consumer ones, but can control with a mobile device or remotely. By my forecast, there's something in the order of 450,000 to 500,000 transactions a second flying around the internet today, which is just light bulb data. Light on, light off, dim up, dim down, change color, change name, associate with kitchen, whatever it may be. Now, if you think about how many connected light bulbs there are in the world, it's a 1% of 1% of 1%, like it's a tiny, tiny fraction. So just to give you a sense of what the tsunami, as you called it, of data that's coming just from the light bulb market, and that doesn't take into account anything else, is going to be enormous. And so that will take some time, of course. Most of that data today won't or isn't on a cellular network, it's on a Wi-Fi or Zigbee or other type of network. So I think what's going to save us in terms of the on-ramping to 5G is the fact that we've got this consortium of transports that we're using today that will help shoulder the load in the meantime.
I'd add that I think we'll see the rollout of 5G very similar to other networks, 4G and 3G. There's still standards, spectrum. I think the use cases are incredible out there, and I think that will be a driving force, but there are steps to go through. So if you look back at the previous technologies, 4G, I think we started really talking about the conferences and hearing about in the mid-2000s. It wasn't until last year that there's more 4G connections than 3G connections. So 10 years later, and I think 4G is going to be the majority of connections to about 2025 with 5G passing it up. So it's a methodical rollout in technologies. We saw that at 3G, we saw that with 2G. But that doesn't matter. The use cases are great. I think that's going to help push it forward, and the carriers, the infrastructure providers are going to work on the standards to get this moving forward.
As we in Wall Street always like to talk about the TAM, the total addressable market of this. Do you define the TAM, or is it just so big it's almost hard to put numbers around? And then I guess I'd ask you all, who's the best positioned to kind of leverage off this wave and really be well positioned? Is it the software companies? Is it the infrastructure companies? Is it the equipment players, towers, spectrum owners, fiber owners?
Yeah.
Love your opinion there.
So I guess I'll lay the market TAM's numbers out there. So in total telecom services, the market's around $2 trillion, to keep simple round numbers, and wireless is about half of that, about $1 trillion in services revenue out there. The CapEx, the wireless guys are spending almost 20% on CapEx, so it's about a $200 billion CapEx they're spending on infrastructure right now. 5G, I think the direct investment, I think I've seen anywhere from 5 to 10% by 2020 is going to be spent directly on 5G infrastructure by 2020. So still, you're looking, even if that market grows to 250 billion CapEx, 20 to 25 billion at the highest end that I've seen out there. What I think I'm more excited about is, you could take what Cisco says. They think that by using 5G, the IoT impact on the world economy is 14.4 trillion. So there are broad opportunities in IoT that's going to benefit everyone out there in the value chain. People are delivering video. I'm sure we're going to hear that from Mark Cuban tomorrow about how he delivers video over broadband and wireless to movie theaters and not digital reels. And Phil Anschultz had that vision 20 years ago, how that's going to happen. So I think the enablement of much broader economy and changing the way we do things is going to be a big impact. But it will grow direct investment. I think the vendors will benefit there as well.
Okay.
They're still riding the SDN NFV wave, which is really starting to see the big deployments this year.
Right. Dave?
So I used to say that everything that was powered, either mains powered or battery powered, would become connected. And I no longer believe that, because now we're already adding connectivity to things that aren't powered. We're adding sensors, we're adding connected metering devices. And so I think it's actually very, very hard to come up with a TAM without using very broad numbers and broad strokes. You just can't do it.
Yeah, right.
There's enough zeros there for everyone to be very, very happy. I also like to say that I don't think there's going to be a single dominant player in any one of the verticals associated with the market. I don't think there's going to be a Google, if you use the search analogy, in the IoT, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be analytics, whether it be software platforms. I think it's moving so fast, and the nature of the industry is such that there's not time for any one company to get that far ahead, nor is any one company that far ahead that you won't see a number of very, very substantial players in the space.
I think if we fast forward to maybe another 10 years from today, the way that we can see it is every single thing will have a 5G connectivity one way or another, okay? Even some of those sensors that they have a proprietary technologies, even in the future, the traffic will be aggregated to be carried over a 5G connectivity, okay? So from that perspective, we can look into the total addressable market will be going beyond only just the regular infrastructure equipment or the devices. It will be touching on everything that will be connected.
So instead of TAM, let's talk about market capitalization. I saw this very interesting analysis recently that took the entire mobile landscape and all the players in it and broke it down into its constituent parts. It's a $5 trillion market cap, and it's comprised of carriers, phone companies like Apple, also the data center companies like Google, etc. What the analysis showed was that from 2007 to 2015, the carrier TAMs or carrier market caps had declined 20% CAGR.
They did.
The device manufacturers had increased 70%, and the data center guys had gone up 170% in that same period. So, we sell and supply our software to the mobile operators, and we firmly believe that that trend can be reversed with 5G, that they can start to grow, and they can really take advantage of that larger ecosystem if they get ahead of it, if they do the things that they need to do today in their 4G networks to prepare them to take advantage of 5G, like things like software, things like edge computing, et cetera. So that's sort of how do we think about it.
Could you comment on which carriers, all of you, are thinking most forward-looking? Or am I getting into a gray area with some of your customers?
We love them all.
Okay, you love your children equally? Yeah.
But no doubt certain carriers are a bit ahead of others. We're big supporters of every carrier worldwide.
I think it's, different carriers, they have a different strategy, and based on their strategies, they take a different path towards how they are going to deploy the 5G.
Right.
And that's why, 5G as a platform enables them to have this flexibility to take one direction or another direction.
I think regionally you're seeing some of the carriers in North America, obviously in the press, make more aggressive announcements, and also certain parts of Asia, Japan, of course, with the next Olympics, have been hyping it up a little bit, and Southeast Asia. So regionally, I think there's some areas moving faster than others.
All right. Do we want to open it up to questions? We have about 9 minutes left.
Does anybody have a question? I can come bring the microphone to you. Don't be shy. Anybody have a question? I mean, this is kind of a hot button topic right now with everything going towards 5G trends. So, okay, right over here.
Thank you. My name is Ammar. I work with Virgin Mobile Latin America. My question is about why would the new devices have 5G, not keep with Wi-Fi and keep doing with what we have now? Why the new devices, smaller with lower consumption of power and battery, etc., have to move to 5G?
Okay. So when it comes to the devices, okay, the devices, they have their own the ecosystem that is this device are built on. So you already have the Wi-Fi that is already deployed everywhere. So Wi-Fi will still be supported on the devices, and then the 5G, when it will come, as we mentioned earlier, that the standard will not be coming before 2018, and then the full compliance will be 2019, and when the standard will be completed and the operators will start to be deploying the 5G services, then you'll start to see the ecosystem will be built up. The ecosystem is built based on the demand and the push of the operators for deploying the services.
I think the question was, you still today have IoT devices that are still 2G capable. So
absolutely, and will stay. Will stay also for a future, for the foreseeable future, to have IoT supported on enhanced versions of the 2G. So, for example, the EC GSM, which is meant for the IoT. The whole thing here is that it's not only just a new air interface that will be coming and it will take over everything. There will be some technologies that exist today, whether it is in different parts of the world that they still have the 2G, or it will be because of the optimized usage of it that will still use a 2G or 3G or 5G.
Also recall that battery life and cost will be huge factors here. And there'll be some devices that, for example, power reasons, can't support a 2G network with anything longer than a few months battery life, or maybe even less. Or the size or cost of the device is such that they really need to take advantage of the cost and the benefits of 5G chipsets. So every device will be different. To my earlier point, I don't think you're going to see a sudden switch. You will see, and part of the 5G standard will be this interoperability with other networks and forming this sort of global connectivity. But it'll be very much dependent on the device, I think, and the scenario the device is deployed in.
I would say from experience, one of the things I've done for CTIA every year is I've judged IoT and IoT devices. And a funny thing you see when you judge the IoT devices, they all have how long the device could live in the market, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. And the promise of 5G is, someone could say 15 or 20 years because of the power consumption and the battery life. And that will be, one case example of why 5G.
I'm Kevin Morgan with Clearfield. Just a quick question. In the cellular rollouts, you've seen a lot of demand for fiber optics, and there's an interplay as you get to the 5G, especially with low latency. Can you just kind of comment on that interplay of fiber optics with the wireless architectures?
Definitely, when it comes to the backhaul, which is very, very important, that we will need to have, we need to rely on a much higher speed that will be provided by the fiber optics, but also the concept of cloud RAN, and once we start to move into the virtualized RAN, you will have your radios that will need to have a front haul, okay? Where you are going to have the radio and where it's supposed to be, and of course the baseband in your data center or in your edge computing location. This will definitely need to have a fiber connectivity. So to answer your question is, there will be more and more need and kind of an integration of the fiber with the 5G deployment, special architecture.
Yeah, we agree with that view. I think, again, going back to the idea that software will be a big component, the only component, arguably, of 5G architectures. Cloud RAN will definitely be a big part of that, and in order to do that with front haul, fiber will be needed.
We follow some of the fiber infrastructure companies, and AT&T and Verizon are their largest customers, and the spending's been going like that. Is that something you continue to see in order to use the products you've talked about? That fiber has to be that critical base?
Well, always remember that with the fiber, if you start to deploy the fiber, the capex cost of the fiber is high. Okay?
Trenching, yeah.
But of course, you will leverage it over the long term because you will have capacity on the ground. I think the operators will be selective on how they are going to invest into providing the fiber. It's not going to be everywhere, but also we need to remember that all the municipalities, they are building fibers in the localities,
Right.
and this could be also a good play for leveraging the fiber that is installed, not necessarily installed by the operators, but by other players.
Are there any more questions?
We can squeeze one more question
One more,
in.
and that's probably all we have time for.
Alain Negeda from Alcatel. My question is, some countries in Middle East and Africa, they don't have the fiber infrastructures, and it's very costly to start building something on the ground. Do you think that we can apply 5G or something through the air, maybe something similar to Aqualia was done by Facebook, drones or balloons or something like that?
Definitely, there is a lot of places, whether it is very difficult to put an infrastructure or the infrastructure is not mature enough. And this is where the wireless infrastructure can be playing a role, especially on the 5G, and especially when we talk about the beamforming, very directive. You can provide either fixed wireless or also you can enhance the mobility down there. So definitely there is a lot of operators and a lot of regions that will benefit a lot from the 5G as a fixed connectivity.
Great, why don't we end it there? Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you for listening in the fun.